Last year's dual hurricane strikes of Helene and Milton left thousands of Tampa Bay residents and businesses damaged or destroyed. And for many, they are still in the long process of recovery, and the upcoming hurricane season has the region on edge. Joining me now are several Bay Area residents who were hit by the storms and are still in the process of recovery and rebuilding. Ashley Butler is a business owner and entrepreneur who suffered damage to both her businesses and her home. Mike Deason is a longtime journalist in Tampa Bay who lost the home in which he raised his family. And Clara Reynolds is the president and the CEO of the Crisis Center of Tampa Bay. This is the organization that provides crisis and trauma services for those in need. Thank you so much for coming. So glad to have your perspectives as we head into another hurricane season after last year's very traumatic one. Mike, I'd like to start with you. Share with our viewers what happened in your life.
Well, our home, which was right off of West Shore in South Tampa, had 4 feet of water in Helene. And then when Milton came, we had a bunch of oak trees came through the roof. So basically we lost everything in our house, all our furniture. We lost our cars, lost the house. It was strange being on that end of a hurricane, because I had covered hurricanes going back to 1985 and Elena. That never got closer than 60 miles to Tampa Bay, but did devastating damage along the beaches. And then I spent 4 weeks in Homestead after Andrew.
Hurricane Andrew, yeah.
And it was devastating then, but then to be a victim of it here was tough. The way I got through it was in so many hurricanes, particularly Andrew, people didn't survive. In Andrew, we saw body bag after body bag after body bag.
For you and your family, what would you say was the biggest lesson learned from last year's season? It really changed how you're going to approach hurricane season.
Yeah, well, the thing I learned, that it's ironic. I always said to folks that if they tell you you have to evacuate, you must evacuate. Well, we had 3 dogs with us, and we were trying to figure out what to do. Our house had never flooded or anything because it was set back. But it was built in 1961, so it wasn't up high. So we're going along, and then all of a sudden, the water starts coming in. My wife was freaking out. I mean, and I was just going, oh my goodness. But it was too late to try to leave. And plus the cars were all flooded and all that. The water finally stopped. The one thing that came through that came from almost everybody who didn't evacuate after the storm, people said to me, I was a damn fool. I put my life and my family's life at risk.
I heard it phrased other ways,
yeah,
too.
Well, yeah, I know. Well, I'm trying, right. But yeah. the thing was, we were never in real danger. I mean, 4 feet of water in your house is not a good thing, but we weren't in danger from the wind or anything, which oftentimes kills so many people. But still, if they say evacuate, the only reason we didn't leave was because of the dogs. With 3 dogs,
Take the dogs with you next time.
Oh, yeah, you have to take the dogs with you, but you got to find someone who's saying, "Oh yeah, bring your 3 dogs and your family over here." But that's the most important. If they say evacuate, evacuate.
And Ashley, you had, I call it the double whammy, because not only were you worried about your home, you're worried about your employees that work for you and all the businesses. Tell us about that experience in terms of the business aspect.
So our organization is a franchise organization. So we have 16 locations, 11 different franchisees, just over 100 employees throughout the entire system. And so not only were revenues affected, which is the low-hanging fruit, revenues will be affected, the care of the people who are in our care was heavy. And then you had all these big decisions to make around how do you pull it together? And how do you pull it together and not let anyone fall flat? And so where some people may not have had any emergency funding, how do you get resources to people while you hold on to resources? And how do you advise franchisees how to do that when there's a clear separation between us providing information on how they should take care of their employees as a franchisee-franchisor model. So what we really learned was to take it one day at a time and take it one issue at a time and just discuss it, create a solution, and then like you said, now in the aftermath, come up with the plan on how do you make sure we do this best moving forward.
Yeah, and you had the employees who were affected. You had franchisees who were
Yes.
affected in the range, right?
Yeah.
Some were very affected, others not so much, others were devastated. How did you handle that?
Well, we're in 5 different counties here in West Central Florida. As far north as Citrus, and then we're down as far south as Pinellas at this time. And so in Citrus County, Crystal River, the franchisee there, Rick, they had gone through tornadoes the season before. They had already started bouncing back, and then they had amazing flooding. I mean, like, it was all over the news, amazing flooding, to where when it was time to open back up, they really couldn't open back up because roadways weren't there, and then also there weren't any cars because cars got flooded.
That's right.
And so it was a practice in being peaceful with what you have. That's what it was. It was a mental practice on being peaceful with what you have and being grateful for what you have. There weren't any body bags. And so we just worked the problem backwards nice and easy and just listened to them. And as their employees needed things, we reached out to our HR team and they found resources in the area to refer them to. We were posting in our Slack communication, hey, here's a list of people where you can get some help. As soon as Florida released some of the funding through the state, when our governor opened up some funding, we made sure everybody could get to the application quickly, that they understood the timelines, advised them on not taking out the risky loans, because there's all these merchant capital advance things that you can think are a solution, but they're really not. And so there was a lot of coaching and bonding through the pain.
But you were doing that with the family of Ice Cold Air franchises. But what about at home? What was going on? Was your home impacted as well?
We were actually in the 4th quarter of completing our custom build here in Hampton Terrace. So we that was stalled, and we were living in a friend's home, which was not too far from there, renting it. They were getting ready to move back to Florida or back to Tampa. So we were moving and packing, getting ready to leave our rental house while our friends who were renting to us were coming back home.
What a disaster.
Protecting their house, protecting our rental property, protecting the shops. And so we were cooking on the grill out in the backyard, offering resources to other tents or saying, hey, we have a deep freezer full of meat. Would you like to come get some meats?
Yeah.
And so it really pulled community together, and it really just showed us who we were and who we could be in the midst of everything, nothing, and uncertainty.
I mean, in the spirit of full disclosure, I have to say that I was a victim of the hurricane as well. I mean, we had 5 feet of water in our home in Reddington Shores, and it just felt like somebody took a big, gigantic bucket and swooshed the water in, and everything just went up to the corner.
Well, yeah, they
It's
floated
like whoosh.
in our house. We had this heavy couch I could hardly move,
Insanity.
and it
Yeah.
floated up to the fireplace from the wall. It was like, how can this be happening? Right?
But when as bad as that was for our family, it has been nothing compared to the battle with the insurance that's happened afterwards. And so many people focus on the storm, but it's the aftermath of that storm that really is so incredibly difficult. And so the lesson that I learned was I will never do this without a public adjuster, someone who will represent me and my family and my interests with the insurance company. Because I always thought that following all the rules, having insurance, securing your home, the sandbags, the shutters, all that, worst case scenario, you'd be okay because the system would take care of you, and that has not been what I found.
Well, okay, with us, the flood insurance was great, but the homeowner's insurance said, well, it was a flood. Well, after the oak trees
They
came...
fight over if it's damage under 4 feet, the flood will cover
Right.
it. If it's above 4 feet, the property insurance will cover. In my case, it's been the opposite. The flood insurance has been a disaster, and then the property insurance has been fine. And so what I find is as we get closer to that June 1 date, heaven forbid that first swirl come on the map, it's almost like a trigger. So many people tell me they're feeling very, very anxious. Clara, I mean, you've heard the stories.
Absolutely.
How do you deal with this?
I think first of all, the beautiful thing right here is that you all are laughing about it right now. I mean, you can retell this horrifically traumatizing story with a bit of laughter. And I think that's such a healthy response when you're able to get there. I think, Lissette, to your point, we are seeing so many people who have not experienced, Mike and Ashley, what you all have. You've got folks that are still fighting insurance, who have lost their jobs, maybe lost income. So they are not just emotionally impacted, they are economically impacted. And as we talked about before, when you see your children who are now, the first storms, happened a couple of weeks ago, and kids are hiding under their bed. They're terrified. So it is that word trigger, meaning that you're experiencing something right now, but you're flashing back to what happened, and that can be so difficult to manage, and to manage the anxiety, because that's what we hear all the time. Folks call in the crisis center going, I'm already starting to worry. I'm already starting to feel anxious. And so a lot of what we talk about is, okay, how do you reduce that anxiety? You deal with the fear of the unknown. What can you control? Take care of what you control, and then kind of work through with your family about the things that may happen that you won't have any control over.
And I love the fact that our panelists really represent the community. You have a business owner who wasn't just worried about herself, was worried about the people in her community that work for her. You have Mike, who is a person who thought, this would never happen to me, because I've seen the worst, covering stories and hurricanes for decades, and I'll be okay. And so we really represent the brain power of most people out there. Like, I'm the person who thinks, as long as I follow all the rules, I'll be okay. Not. So, what advice do you give as hurricane season begins? What is their advice for kind of navigating the season with their employees?
I think you take it seriously. One of the things we talked about is I'm second generation Floridian. Ashley's native. Mike, you've been here for a long time. Lissette, many of us have not taken hurricane season seriously. So I think as an employer, because I run the crisis center, we had staff that were impacted. I'm going to make sure that this hurricane season, when we talk about having your go bag ready, because again, we operate 24/7. So staff have to literally come, and they live at the crisis center during this time, to not only make sure you've got your physical household and things ready to go, but you've also got to think about, how am I going to manage emotionally in the days afterwards? And how am I going to try to reduce some of that stress and anxiety? So in addition to the flashlights and the water and those kinds of things, I'm also going to think about, what are some things that I can do that will just allow me to escape? And maybe that's that favorite book. Maybe it's a crossword puzzle. It's some coloring sheets. It's something that doesn't take electricity, but things that I can do that I can just sit back in the moment, be able to decompress, be able to disconnect, so that I can kind of empty that anxiety and be ready to take the next step. Because I think one of the things we all talked about is, many folks who called us, they were so anxious they couldn't make a decision, because there were so many things going on in their world, and they were paralyzed because they had too much going on in their head, because they hadn't tried to take a breath. They hadn't stopped to process and just recognize that they had experienced a trauma. You don't have to respond right this second. It's okay to step back and take a breath and to disconnect from it, so that you're ready to move forward.
My FEMA inspector, after he looked through the house, which was a disaster, he put his arm around me and said, I know you don't believe life will ever get back to normal. He said, but it will. And he said, the reason I can say that with certainty is because his home was destroyed in Houston in the storms there. He said, my house was as bad as your house is right now. And then he rebuilt, but he said, it won't happen tomorrow or the week after, but life will get back to normal.
And I love hearing you say that, because there are so many stories on the opposite end, where the FEMA person, the flood insurance person, I should say, or the person that represented the property insurance was not kind and added to their stress.
This guy.
It's like it runs the gambit in terms of what happens. And so, how was your process? What advice do you give our viewers in terms of like things that worked for you in the post storm in terms of the insurance?
Okay,
and
pictures. I mean, thank God for cell phones.
Yeah.
So I mean, I did videos, but I did pictures of everything. I tried to make a list of what we had that was expensive and that should be covered by insurance. You've got to document that, and then save the bills. FEMA wanted all that, because we bought storage bins and all of that. So we save the bills, take pictures, use your cell phone. I mean, that is such a blessing. 15 years ago, people wouldn't have it.
Right.
They might have
to
a VHS
or reach
video.
for the camera that's now underwater.
That's right. Yeah,
of the
but
flood.
the cell phone's with you. So that, I think that is the most important thing. Document.
When you brought that up, dealing with business interruption coverage. If you have business interruption coverage in your business, you want to make sure that your P&Ls are clean and ready to go, because that's going to be a part of their discovery. You want to make sure that you have a Excel spreadsheet of all of your equipment, to where you have your purchase date, how much you purchased it for. You may even add your depreciation if your accountant will add that information. Document. Make sure you have your bills. When we lost a 2016 Mercedes Metris cargo van, and they were saying, oh, well, give us a bill for the fabrication, for the partition and the powder coating and all the investments you made in the vehicle. And I was thinking, wow, that was like 7 years. Like, how do I figure this out? And because we have these spreadsheets that
just
have
provide
everything,
the documentation.
Be prepared to protect your investments, and try not to throw your hands up and give away your future choices out of frustration, which I heard from you, Ms. Clara, is people will be so frustrated and just be so used to taking a lump or taking a loss that they don't stand up for themselves. Take a beat, read a book, play a Sudoku, take a walk, calm yourself, and provide the information you need so that your family can be taken care of. That you paid the insurance, it's on them to own up to their side of the deal. And in January, when our business interruption checks started showing up, they really did help. Some of those things that we had to put on credit cards to make it through that fourth quarter, when those business interruption checks started arriving in January, we were able to pay down those cards. And so just be patient. That's a big thing, documentation.
I have to add is, before the storm, if you have important papers, be sure to put them in a safe place. Like, they wanted our insurance policy, which was in a desk that had been overrun with water. I picked it up. You couldn't read anything.
Yeah.
So if you think a storm is coming, if you have important papers, put them in a safe place, high up.
You're going to evacuate the next time. So evacuate with those documents. I know that's what I did.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for sharing your stories and also your advice. I think that our purpose in this show is to be a resource to our viewers, and thanks to all of you, we've been able to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.